She always feared dying alone. She never imagined it would feel like this while still alive. The sun hung heavy over the dusty sky, turning the air to metal. Even the jasmine plants, always proud near the old stone veranda, sagged under the weight of the heat. But inside the mansion, under the arching silence, Madame Hannah waited. Her chair creaked as she rolled it closer to the gate. 3 days. 3 whole days since she'd last heard from Jacob. Her son, her only child. She had watered the plants like usual, prayed like usual, sat by the gate with her hands resting in her lap, eyes tracing the clouds, as if they might carry him home. He's just busy, she told herself. He'll come. He always comes. But on the 3rd day, when the iron gate finally groaned open, she felt it in her chest before she even saw him, that something was different. The metal scraped like an old throat clearing after holding in something heavy. She looked up. There he was, Jacob, wearing a crisp white shirt, gold-framed sunglasses, and the kind of smile that came from someone who'd already decided the ending of the story. Beside him was a beautiful woman, barely in her mid-20s, with smooth skin, a quiet face, and an expensive anchor-pattern dress clinging softly to her waist. They walked hand in hand, like they belonged together. His wristwatch glinted in the sun. His silence carried weight. He stopped a few feet away from the wheelchair. And then, as if he were reading out a news headline, he said, "Mom, I got married 2 days ago." The words hit her like cold water. She blinked, certain she'd misheard. Her hands began to tremble, her voice barely audible. "Jacob, you got married 2 days ago? And you didn't tell me?" "Well, I'm still here, still alive." He looked past her shoulder like she was part of the scenery. "Please don't make a scene." The world stilled. The birds stopped. Even the breeze seemed to hold its breath. The woman beside him, soft voice, kind eyes, whispered, "Good afternoon, Ma. My name is Adana, but people call me Natalia." Madame Hannah's gaze darted from the girl back to Jacob. Her lips parted. "I raised you alone. You know that, right? From the day your father was buried in a flag, I worked day and night. I carried cement on my back. I sold Accra at dawn. I wore shoes with holes and smiled when you brought home good grades. When I fell from that scaffold and lost my legs, I still said, 'It is well,' because I believed it was worth it. You were worth it." Jacob gave a small, dry chuckle. It didn't reach his eyes. "We're already married, Mom. It's done." She looked down, blinked hard. Her fingers, thin and veined, reached for his sleeve, but he stood stiff, unmoved. She whispered again, "Is it not wise to let me see your happiest day?" Jacob's smile sharpened into something colder. "I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want anyone looking at you and thinking I'm the guy whose mother's in a wheelchair. People talk, Mom. I'm tired of explaining." Natalia flinched, visibly. "Jacob, you can't talk like that. Not about her." He ignored her, walked past the woman who raised him, walked into the house like it didn't matter. When he came back, he had a thick envelope in his hand. He dropped it on Hannah's lap. She winced as the edge scraped her leg. "The house is yours," he said. "It's worth 300 million naira. That should cover everything. Don't call me. Don't look for me. Don't embarrass me again." Hannah stared at the papers like they were ashes. "Jacob," she breathed, reaching again, palm open like when he was 5 and had scraped his knee. "Please, while I'm still alive." But he stepped back, and just like that, her hand hovered in the air, unanswered. The wind picked up. Jasmine petals danced in the air like scattered prayers. The papers fluttered and one slipped off her lap. The chair rolled. She gasped. Her will nudged the edge of the steps. Time cracked open. A horn blared in the distance. The gate began to slide again, grinding metal on metal. The air thinned. The jasmine bent in the gust. Then hands. Firm, strong, urgent. The chair jerked back just in time. Madame Hannah clutched the armrest, chest heaving. She turned her head slowly. It was Natalia, Jacob's new wife, a stranger, the girl she had feared, resented, suspected. Now, the only person who had touched her with care. I couldn't let you fall," Natalia whispered, still gripping the handles. Hannah stared at her, the shock still swimming behind her eyes. Then, "Thank you, my daughter." Behind them, Jacob's car engine roared. He didn't look back. The gate clanged shut. The living room felt colder than usual. Or maybe it was just emptier. Natalia placed a glass of warm water into the old woman's hands. Please drink, Ma. Hannah sipped it slowly, as if it were precious. I once dreamed of this day, she said quietly, the day my son would bring a woman home. I imagined sitting near him, laughing, clapping when you walked in wearing white. I thought I would hold his child one day. But now, her voice broke. Natalia looked down. I didn't know he hadn't told you, she whispered. I thought you were at the wedding. I didn't even know there was no wedding. Hannah's lips pulled into a tight, sad smile. So, even you were kept in the dark. Natalia nodded, shame coloring her cheeks. It was so sudden. He said it was better that way. I believed him. I didn't question. The old woman closed her eyes. Life will teach you. A man who dishonors his mother has already planted the seed of his downfall. Natalia shivered. The words landed hard. Later that evening, Natalia made jollof rice with her own hands. She set the plate in front of Hannah like an offering. You cooked this? The old woman asked, voice cracked with disbelief. Yes, Ma. Please eat. Hannah's eyes swam with tears. In my old age, my son's wife, cooking for me. I thought I would die without such kindness. She reached for Natalia's hand, squeezed gently. May God bless you, my daughter. May you never feel the pain of being forgotten. Natalia blinked fast, holding back her own tears. That night, as the compound slipped into darkness, neither woman could sleep. One stared at the ceiling haunted by years of sacrifice. The other, by a marriage already cracking under silence. They didn't know it yet, but the storm had only just begun. The morning after Jacob drove away without looking back, the mansion sat like a wound wrapped in concrete. Even the wind seemed cautious, slipping only gently through the open windows. The jasmine flowers, once so full of life, bent toward the earth as if mourning. Madame Hannah wheeled herself slowly into the sunlight, her body stiff, joints aching from sleep that barely touched her. Her heart felt like a box of empty matches, dry, brittle, used up. She parked herself beneath the jasmine. That had always been her place, where she used to wait for Jacob as a child, his brown school shorts flapping against thin legs, lunchbox dangling in one hand. He used to run to her, hug her knees. She pressed a hand to her chest, remembering. She stayed out there all morning, hoping, listening. But the gate didn't groan. No footsteps came, just the ticking of the old wall clock from inside the house, sounding louder than it should. At noon, Natalia emerged from the house, a bowl of pepper soup steaming in her hands. Her steps were slow, careful. Ma, she said gently, setting the tray on the small table beside the chair. You haven't eaten. Please, just a little. Hannah turned, eyes soft with fatigue. My daughter, she said slowly, God bless you. When I look at you, I see the daughter I never had. Natalia knelt beside her, placed a hand over hers. Ma, please don't cry anymore, she whispered. Maybe Jacob will change. Maybe he just needs time. Hannah shook her head. I fear it is not time he needs. It is a new heart, a pause. He is ashamed of me, Natalia. That's the truth. And when shame enters a man's heart, it darkens his vision. He no longer sees love, only shadows. Natalia's eyes glistened. 2 days passed. Hannah waited each morning, sat beneath the jasmine, stared at the gate like it might remember how to open. Natalia stayed. She didn't tell Jacob she hadn't left. She cooked, cleaned, helped the old woman bathe. At night, she sat beside her as Hannah drifted in and out of restless sleep, murmuring names from the past, including one Jacob had long stopped answering to, my son. On the third day, a car screeched into the compound. Jacob, dark glasses, designer suit, phone in one hand. He stepped out like nothing had happened. Natalia rushed to meet him before he could enter. Jacob, she said quickly, glancing back at the veranda where Hannah Saturday, please, just greet her. She's still hurt. Say something. He didn't stop walking. I don't want to talk about this again. I moved on. Moved on, she echoed, stunned. He turned to her briefly, expression blank. From everything that drags me down. I didn't ask to be born in a wheelchair home. I'm done pretending. People already talk behind my back. I'm tired of carrying that weight. Natalia grabbed his wrist, her voice sharp. Jacob, listen to yourself. That woman gave up her life for you. She bled for you. How can you say this? He yanked his arm free, cold. Don't enter what you don't understand. I gave her the house. Isn't that enough? Enough. Her voice cracked. No amount of money replaces love. She doesn't want your house. She wants her son. But he was already turning away. The suitcase thudded into the boot. The trunk slammed shut. From the edge of the veranda, a voice rang out. Soft, shaky, but clear enough to slice the air. Jacob, my son. He paused. Didn't turn. Just stood there. She wheeled closer, hands trembling on the wheels. If this is the last time I see you, remember this, she said. I loved you. With everything I had. Even my legs. Even my life. Don't forget it. Her hand lifted, shaking in the wind. Jacob turned slightly. The sunglasses hit his eyes. Then he got in the car and drove off. No word. No wave. Just dust rising in the wake of the tires. Natalia ran to the old woman, heart racing. I'm so sorry, she whispered, kneeling beside the wheelchair. I thought he would at least answer you. But Hannah didn't answer. Her eyes were glassy, lips pale. My daughter, she murmured. I think my journey is almost over. He does not see me anymore. I pray that one day he will understand. That night, Hannah ate only a few spoonfuls of rice. Natalia begged to take her to the hospital. No, Hannah whispered. Don't waste your energy. Just sit with me. Just talk. So Natalia sat and listened to stories of a brave soldier who never came home, of nights under the moonlight frying akra before dawn, of the day Hannah slipped on wet concrete carrying a bag of cement, and how her legs never moved again. All for my boy, she said, voice barely audible. And now, at the end, he treats me like a stranger. At midnight, she finally drifted into sleep. Her breathing was uneven, her hands cold. Natalia sat beside her until morning. The next day, she had to leave. Meetings, errands. Jacob had arranged appointments behind her back. She didn't want to go, but Hannah insisted. Go, my daughter, she said. You've already done more than I ever dreamed. I'll be back by evening, Natalia promised. But time stretched. One day became 2, then 3. On the 3rd evening, something tugged at Natalia's chest like a hand made of smoke. She rushed back to the house. As she stepped through the gate, a sharp smell hit her nose. Bitter, heavy, sour. Her heart skipped. Ma, she called, running inside. Ma, no answer. She ran down the hallway. The door to Hannah's room was ajar. She pushed it open and froze. The smell washed over her in a wave. On the bed, Madame Hannah lay still, eyes closed, skin pale, hands folded over her chest. The tray of food in Natalia's hand slipped, crashed to the floor. Plate shattered. No, she whispered. No, no, no. She dropped to her knees beside the bed, sobbing. Ma, please. Wake up. I'm sorry. I didn't come sooner. Please. She took the old woman's cold hand in hers and held it tightly. Not letting go. Not ready. Through her tears, she fumbled for her phone and called Jacob. When he answered, his voice was bored. What is it, Natalia? I'm busy. Her voice cracked. Jacob, your mother is gone. Silence. Then, why were you even there? Didn't I tell you to stay out of it? Click. He hung up. Natalia stared at the screen, her hand shaking. She called again and again. He didn't answer. At last, she called the authorities. They came, took Hannah's body, arranged the burial. On the day of the funeral, the sky was dull. No music, no crowd, just an empty stretch of chairs. Only one person stood by the grave. Natalia, dressed in black, shoulders trembling. As the soil hit the coffin, she whispered, Rest well, Ma. If Jacob won't honor you, I will. But in her heart, a decision had already begun to bloom. A silent vow, because she knew now, no matter how deeply you love someone, there's a kind of cruelty you cannot forgive. The day after the funeral, the mansion felt heavier than before. It was not just the quiet, it was the absence. The smell of jasmine still floated near the veranda, but without Madame Hannah, even the flowers looked like they had given up blooming. Natalia sat in the vast living room, wearing the same black dress from a burial. Her hair was tied back, her hands folded in her lap. The tray she used to carry meals to Hannah still leaned against the wall near the kitchen, untouched. She had not eaten, had not slept, Her phone buzzed. Jacob. She stared at the name for a long second, heart pounding. A part of her still hoped he would ask about the funeral, maybe offer to pay for it, maybe ask if his mother was laid to rest properly. Maybe. She picked up. Hello. His voice was flat. Why are you not home yet? Natalia blinked. Home, she repeated, the word bitter in her mouth. Jacob, your mother is in the ground. The woman who raised you, who broke her back to make you who you are. She died alone because you abandoned her. And you dare ask why I'm not home. He sighed, impatient. Natalia, don't start. I told you to stay out of my family matters. She's gone. It's over. What do you want me to do? Cry in public and let the media call me weak? Her hand shook. Rage and sorrow mixed in her chest like fire and ice. Cry in public, she said, voice trembling. Jacob, you didn't even cry in private. You didn't come. You didn't call. You didn't care. She didn't wait for him to respond. She ended the call. And that was the moment Natalia knew this marriage was already dead. Only the paper had yet to catch up. The next week, she made her choice. At the High Court in Lagos, she stood tall and silent before the clerk. Her hands didn't shake when she signed. The word divorce had never looked so clean. She didn't cry. Not at the court. Not when the papers were sealed in a brown envelope. Not even when she requested police presence, just in case. She knew what Jacob was capable of. Not with fists, but with words and silence. Sometimes those hurt more. That evening, she drove to his new mansion in Eco-Atlantic. The estate was all glass and gloss, tall gates, imported marble. It looked expensive, empty, like him. The guards recognized her and opened the gate. Jacob was lounging on the couch in the main room, silk shirt unbuttoned at the collar, a half-filled glass of champagne in hand. He smiled lazily when he saw her. Finally, he said, you're here. I thought you'd sulk forever. Natalia didn't sit. She placed the envelope on the table between them. Jacob, this is for you. He frowned, setting his glass aside. What is it? Divorce papers. He stared at her, laughed once like she was joking. When she didn't move, he grabbed the envelope, ripped it open, scanned the contents. His expression turned from amused to confused to furious. What nonsense is this? He snapped. Divorce? We haven't even had a proper fight. What's wrong with you? Natalia stood firm, though her knees ached with tension. What's wrong with me? She echoed. Jacob, the problem is not me. It's you. I watched you treat the woman who gave you everything like a stain on your name. If you can do that to your own mother, what future would I have with you? He rose from the couch, voice raised. You dare lecture me? After everything I gave you, I never asked for your money, she shouted back. I asked for love, for respect. You gave me neither. You gave your mother pain, and you gave yourself a curse. That word, curse, hung in the room like smoke. Jacob flinched. Natalia lowered her voice. Calm, cold, true. You told her you were ashamed to be seen with a mother in a wheelchair. You let her die with that shame in her heart. Jacob, your silence killed her. He looked away, jaw clenched. She picked up her handbag and walked to the door. At the threshold, she turned one last time. Our marriage is over, she said. Don't call me. Don't look for me. I'm leaving before you destroy me, the way you destroyed her. Then she left. The two policemen who had waited quietly in the hallway followed her out. Jacob stood alone in his glass mansion, surrounded by gold, crushed by silence. The fall began quietly. First, it was a contract, a massive one with a foreign bank. Cancelled. They cited ethical concerns. Jacob laughed it off. Then came the investigation, fraud, corruption, embezzlement. He called it jealousy. Days later, the government froze Janteka's corporate accounts. He still didn't panic, until they came for his personal assets. His cars, his accounts, even the mansion, all frozen. Jacob Okafor, the tech prodigy, was suddenly liquidless. His staff left. His lawyers stalled. His phone filled with missed calls and messages from angry partners. He didn't answer any of them. At night, he sat in the dark living room, staring into nothing. No mother, no wife, no fortune, only the echo of Natalia's voice. Your silence killed her. One afternoon, he wandered outside. Just walked. Down streets where he was once worshipped. Now, people whispered, Isn't that Jacob from Jantech? God, look how he's finished. He used to drive a Bentley. He said nothing, just kept walking until his feet blistered. Then he saw him, an old man, white beard, leaning on a stick. His eyes were sharp, ancient. Young man, the elders said, do you know why your world is falling apart? Jacob stopped, blinking. His throat was dry. Why? He muttered. The old man's voice was like stone. Because the only person who gave her life for you, who prayed for you, who loved you without asking, she's not at peace. Until you kneel at her grave and beg her spirit to forgive you, nothing will work. Then he walked away, stick tapping against the earth. Jacob stood frozen. For the first time since it all began, he felt afraid. Not of poverty, but of something deeper, something eternal. That night, he sat in the bare mansion, whispering, where's her grave? He had never asked, had never gone. He had no idea where his mother was buried. And he knew there was only one person who might show him now. Natalia. 2 days later, Jacob stood in front of the gate he once thought he'd never approach again. The iron was black, tall, unbending. He felt small beneath it, not just in body, but in spirit. The mansion behind the gate belonged to someone else now. Not a stranger, but someone who had once stood by his side when no one else did. He hadn't spoken to Natalia since the funeral. Now, he needed her, not for comfort, not for forgiveness, but for direction, because he didn't even know where his mother was buried. He didn't attend. He didn't ask. He didn't care. Until now. Now, it was the only thing he cared about. He knocked once. Then again. The gate didn't open. One of the security men stepped out from the side. Younger than Jacob remembered. Taller. Yes? The man asked, eyeing him with suspicion. I need to see Natalia. The guard's brow rose. Madam Natalia doesn't entertain strangers. I'm not a stranger, Jacob said, voice low. I'm her husband. The man snorted. Ex-husband. A second guard emerged, arms folded, leaning against the gate. She doesn't want to see you, he added. Not after what you did. Not looking like that. Jacob's shirt was wrinkled. His shoes were scuffed. The beard on his face made him look older than he was. But he didn't budge. I just need 1 minute, he said. Please. They didn't move. So Jacob did something he hadn't done since he was a child. He knelt, right there, on the pavement, in front of the gate. I just need to know where she's buried, he whispered. Please. I need to say goodbye. From the upstairs balcony, Natalia stood motionless, staring down. It took her a moment to recognize him, then another to believe it. The man who once threw millions around like confetti now looked like he'd been dragged through ash. He was on his knees, not to her, to grief. She inhaled slowly, then spoke to the intercom. Let him in. They sat across from each other in the garden. The same garden where Madame Hannah used to rest after watering her jasmine. Jacob could barely look up. I've lost everything, he said. And I know why. Natalia remained silent. It's my mother, he went on. I didn't honor her. I forgot everything she gave me. And now, the company is crumbling. My accounts are frozen. I have nothing. Still, Natalia said nothing. He swallowed. I need to find her grave. That made her eyes narrow slightly. Why now? Jacob didn't flinch. Because I met a man on the street. An old man. He told me nothing would work in my life until I knelt at her grave and begged for forgiveness. I didn't believe it at first. But now, he paused, eyes glistening. Now, I can't even sleep. I hear her voice when I close my eyes. Natalia's voice came softly. I told you once, Jacob, a man who dishonors his mother has already planted the seed of his downfall. He nodded. I remember. Silence stretched between them. Then she stood. Come, I'll take you. The cemetery was far from the city noise. Just red soil, quiet trees, and stone. Jacob had never been here before. Never even asked where the grave was. Natalia led him through narrow rows of white headstones until they stopped at one, still new. Hannah Okafor, beloved mother. 1948 to 2025. Jacob stared. His knees buckled, and he dropped to the ground. He ran his hand across the letters, like he was trying to feel her voice through the stone. Mom, he whispered. It's me. His voice cracked. Your son. He bowed low until his forehead touched the earth. I failed you. I let pride speak louder than love. I walked away when I should have stayed. I gave strangers my kindness. I gave him my silence. Tears soaked the soil beneath him. I was ashamed of where I came from. But now I see, without you, I had nothing. Everything I am, you gave me. Every success I ever had was built on your back. His chest heaved. I thought wealth made me a man. But I became less than a son. He broke, sobbed without shame. Behind him, Natalia stood quietly, then knelt beside him. She loved you, she said, even after everything. She forgave you long before she died. She only wanted your love, nothing more. Jacob looked up, eyes red. I don't deserve it. No, Natalia said, but she gave it anyway. He turned back to the grave and whispered again, forgive me. In the weeks that followed, something shifted. The court quietly dropped several charges. Investigators found no conclusive evidence. Frozen accounts began to thaw. A few old partners reached out again, cautiously. Jantek began to breathe, shallow but alive. But something else was gone, something Jacob couldn't reclaim. Natalia. He called once, then again. She didn't answer, until one day she did. They met at a quiet cafe. He wore his best clean shirt. She wore gray. Thank you for helping me, he said. She nodded. Your mother forgave you, she said, and I believe your spirit is lighter now. He leaned forward, hopeful. I want to try again. Us. But she shook her head. I can't. Why? Because I saw how you treated the woman who gave you life. And I fear that one day, you would do the same to me. He didn't argue, didn't beg, just nodded slowly. I understand. I wish you peace, she said. But I'm moving on. She stood and left. This time, he didn't follow. Back at the old house, the jasmine bloomed again. Jacob returned to the mansion his mother left him. He didn't hire staff, didn't fill it with new furniture. Just sat on the veranda every evening in the chair she once loved, watching the petals fall. Sometimes he spoke to her. Sometimes he just listened. And when the breeze carried her scent, he whispered, Thank you, Mama. I'm home now. I will live the rest of my life in your honor. One tear would fall, but it was not sorrow alone. It was also peace. The jasmine still bloomed, not with the careless beauty of youth, but with a slow, gentle grace, like something that had learned how to survive. The same way he had. Jacob now lived alone in the old house. Not by accident, not by force, but by choice. Every morning, he woke with the sun and swept the veranda with his own hands. He didn't hire anyone. He didn't want anyone. The silence had become his teacher. It told him things he hadn't been willing to hear before. Some days, he still reached for his phone instinctively, expecting a call from the office, a notification from a bank, a message from an old friend. But the screen stayed blank. He would smile faintly and put it away. He had given up Jantek months ago, resigned quietly. No press release, no drama. The company survived without him, maybe even improved. He didn't miss it. What he missed was something else entirely. The sound of her wheelchair at dawn, the small cough she used to make when waiting for tea, her voice behind him saying, Jacob, my son. He had never realized how loud love could be until it was gone. One day, he returned to the cemetery. He came alone, dressed in a plain gray shirt and sandals. No driver, no entourage, no gold watch, just him, and a bouquet of fresh jasmine wrapped in newspaper. He walked slowly through the rows until he reached her grave. The soil had settled. The headstone now had moss creeping at its base. But the name was still clear. Hannah Okafor, beloved mother, 1948 to 2025. He stood in silence for several minutes, then lowered himself to the grass, folded his legs, and placed the flowers gently before the stone. I've been thinking a lot lately, he said, eyes soft, about what I was chasing, about what I thought made a man. A wind brushed his face, soft but steady. I thought it was power, control, success. He chuckled, sad. But it wasn't. It was you. Everything I became was because of you. And when I left you behind, I lost myself too. He paused. I hope you see me now, not from a place of pain, but from peace. He stayed there for over an hour, not speaking, not moving, just listening. Because some things he had learned are only said in silence. Weeks turned into months. Jacob moved through the world like a man rebuilt from the ground up. No longer sharp-edged, but softened. He spent his days working quietly through the Hannah's Hand Foundation, a charity he had created in his mother's name. He didn't attach his own name, didn't give interviews. The foundation helped single mothers complete their education, paid medical bills for injured laborers, built 2 schools in low-income neighborhoods. And every year on her birthday, they hosted a food drive where no camera was allowed. He hired a team, trained them to work with dignity, to listen before acting, to serve, not save. He visited the beneficiaries often, not as a patron, but as a fellow human. At one hospital, he sat beside a woman recovering from spinal surgery. She was a bricklayer's widow with 3 children. When she said, "Thank you, sir. God will bless your mother," Jacob had to step outside to breathe, because in that moment, he felt her hand again, on his shoulder, forgiving him. One afternoon, a young journalist found him. She had been researching the fall and silence of Jacob Okafor for weeks. Everyone else had a theory. No one had the facts. He agreed to meet her at a small cafe near the beach. It was quiet, the kind of place his old self would have found too ordinary. Now it felt just right. She was nervous, flipping pages, setting up her recorder, eyes wide behind glasses. "Mr. Okafor," she began, "you were once the face of African tech. Then nothing. Why?" He sipped his tea, looked out at the sea. "I lost someone," he said softly. "And it made me realize I'd already lost myself long before that." She hesitated. "You mean your mother?" He nodded. "I dishonored her. And when she died, something inside me broke. Something that needed breaking." She lowered her pen. "And now, what would you say is your greatest achievement?" Jacob turned to her slowly. "My greatest achievement is not what I built." He gestured gently with his hand. "It's what I finally understood." She frowned slightly. "Which is?" He smiled. "That the loudest success in the world means nothing if the person who made it possible dies wondering if you love them." The cafe was silent. The waves outside clapped quietly. She stared at him for a long second, then whispered, "Do you regret it?" He breathed in. "Every day," he said. "But regret is just the seed. If you water it with truth, it can grow into something good." That night, Jacob returned home to the old mansion. The jasmine by the window had bloomed wildly, spilling over the edges of the clay pot. He watered it, trimmed its edges, and swept the fallen petals. He no longer expected company. He no longer expected anything. And in that, he found peace. Before bed, he sat in his mother's chair. Outside, the moon was full. He closed his eyes and whispered into the wind. "I lived too long thinking I owed the world an empire. Turns out, I just owed you a thank you." A single tear rolled down his cheek. But there was no bitterness in it now. Only memory. Only love. Years from now, when people would speak of Jacob Okafor, some would talk about his company, others about his fall. But those who mattered, the mothers he helped, the children he clothed, the strangers he fed, would speak only of what he became after the silence. A man who learned too late, but loved just in time. And sometimes, late love still counts, especially when it blooms beneath jasmine.